RPTV Weekly News Show. My name is Murphy Brown, and my co-hosts are Fred Alvarado,
Daiem Mohammad, Korbin Milo, and Jabin Haque.
We present news that impacts Regent Park and the surrounding areas.
In this episode, we present the following news for the week of February 2nd to February 9th. The crowns offered to Indigenous activist Miguel Avila-Velarde. SDP funding on hold while awaiting city's review. Report of January 27th SDP Planning Committee. SDP reviews its first quarter work plan. A report of February 3rd SDP Planning Committee meeting. SDP Community Working Group holds its first orientation session of the year. CEO Mercedes Watson to be leaving Dixon Hall. Police respond to ongoing Canadian convoy protests questioned, criticized. Ontario reports over 1,000 deaths from COVID-19 in January. Canada welcomes 250 Afghan refugees, including 170 human rights defenders. February is Black History Month. Lastly, events and jobs in Regent Park.
The crowns offered to Indigenous activist Miguel Avila-Velarde.
Miguel is a longtime resident of Regent Park area. He is a member of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association, the Coalition for Community Benefits, and a tenant representative for 220 Oak Street, a Toronto community housing building located just on the fringes of Regent Park. Miguel is also an Indigenous man originally from Peru. His activism is born from his personal lived experience as an Indigenous person and as someone who is living physical and mental issues. On August 14, 2021, Miguel attended a rally in Hamilton, Ontario, to protest the City of Hamilton's decision not to remove the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald that was located in Gore Park. Sir John A. Macdonald is the first Prime Minister of Canada and, among other things, is considered to be one of the architects of the residential school system. On August 15, 2021, Toronto police arrested Miguel at his home and was formally charged by Hamilton Police Services for mischief over $5,000 related to his role in taking down the statue.
The Crown provide to my lawyer is that in 2021, they want me to accept a plea bargain where the offer, as they explained to me, was 6 months in jail and 3 months of probation. My response was, I'm innocent, and you should drop the charges. Since I believed what I was doing was the right thing to do, to ensure that the memory of those children whose graves have been found across Canada, so far that number has gone up to 7,210 children's graves, and keeping a statue of genocide on public space is hurtful. Again, I want to emphasize the word. It's hurtful for Indigenous peoples. They don't want to relieve the same pain and suffering. So if the city of Hamilton and the mayor of Hamilton are not willing to do anything, well, it's up to the people to take matters on their own hands and choose. We choose to be exercise our rights to civil disobedience. In 2022, the Crown has informed my lawyer that they're willing to provide me with something called diversion program. So it means plead guilty. But the inconvenience of this plea bargain is that it stays on record with the police. As I mentioned, I've been an activist since 2010, and I don't see myself retiring anytime sooner. I will continue speaking up for the voiceless and for the poor and anybody who is facing injustice. And I know that this record can hinder me from participating on my activism, which is not just outside in the streets, it's also participating at board meetings, at committee meetings, at City Hall, and other agencies where I raise my voice and my fist for justice and explain to them with my living experiences, my knowledge and experience, telling them that society must change. We must build social housing.
As Miguel's legal issues continue, he has decided to fight the charges and will appear in court again on March 14, 2022. He now faces growing legal costs and has started a GoFundMe campaign to assist him with legal costs.
It's a financial burden. It's not covered by legal aid. So I will appreciate if the community can support me. I have a GoFundMe campaign going on, which is doing very well. And I want to thank each and everybody who is donating towards this GoFundMe campaign, because it will go to pay the legal costs associated with my case.
Despite the threat of criminal charges and the emotional trauma that has now engulfed his life, Miguel is committed to speaking out against what sees as the inequities in society, and that he is proud to have been able to participate in the good fight for a more socially just world.
And now we go with Daiem Mohammad with a report on the SDP funding on hold while awaiting city's review report of January 27th SDP Planning Committee.
The Social Development Plan is a community-wide initiative designed to build social cohesion and inclusion among all the groups and residents in Regent Park. The aim of the SDP Planning Committee is to coordinate all the activities of the various working committees involved in the Social Development Plan. The January 27th meeting of the Stakeholders Planning Committee was facilitated by Ismail Afra, a resident of Regent Park and the TCHC tenant co-chair of the SDP. The SDP planning meeting began with a discussion about the status of the city's announced review of the SDP funding process. The review was to be coordinated by Oleg Segin, a review officer with the city. Unfortunately, Oleg was redeployed from the city's community development unit to take on COVID-related coordination. Richard Kirwan, a community development officer from the city, informed the committee that the city's review will be on hold. Richard Kirwan encouraged the planning committee to proceed with its own internal review of the SDP funding and deep dive process. One of the concerns raised with the delay of the city's review process was that it would delay the 2022 SDP funding allocation, and as a result, the 2022 funded projects would not start and end in the year they were intended for. The SDP table hopes that 2022 funding process can begin in July, along with the 2023 process together, so that the 2023 projects could begin early in 2023. Richard Kirwan informed the table that the city hiring process for Lindsay Jackson was complete, and the new city staff hire would likely come to the February 9th SDP Planning Committee meeting. The next agenda on January 27th, 2022 meeting was a review of the SDP work plan to identify all the leads and co-leads. Following the review of the work plan, Ismail Afra facilitated an exercise and a discussion exploring the purpose of the SDP Planning Committee.
Purpose of the Planning Committee. The committee makes recommendations to the stakeholders table on strategic direction, action priorities, inter-committee alignment, coordination, and resident engagement. So those 5 areas we make recommendations on those 5 areas. And we do this by supporting the stakeholders table to ensure that the meetings are effective. So our main responsibility is to organize and support the stakeholders table that happens every 2 months. Second, we make sure that the 4 working groups are prepared to report to the stakeholders table. And we also address emergency and things, address requirements or requests that are emergency, that it cannot wait for the stakeholders table And we also identify information and expertise that stakeholders need in order to make sound decisions. And lastly, we do this by developing facilitation approaches that increase the capacity of all stakeholders to engage in discussion and decision.
As part of this discussion, the group discussed whether planning committee was working effectively or not and where the areas of the group can improve. Many ideas and suggestions were offered, and the meeting ended by an agreement to collate the information into a report.
And we continue with Jabin Haque on a report on the SDP reviews its first quarter work plan, a report of February 3rd SDP Planning Committee meeting.
The February 3rd meeting of the Stakeholders Planning Committee was once facilitated by Ismail Afra. The main agenda item at the meeting was the review of the SDP work plan and the various subcommittees tasked with work during the first quarter of the year, from January 1st to March 2022. The four main work group tasks for the first quarter, January to March, was the hiring committee, related to the hiring of an SDP admin coordinator, a 15-hour a week to support the work of the SDP. The SDP orientation committee, to help the involvement of new members. The culture committee, related to the adoption of guidelines that support members to participate more effectively in meetings. And the SDP internal funding review committees, related to reviewing the 2021 funding process and recommendations for adoptions for 2022 funding of the SDP. All four working groups each reported on their status, and members were all pleased to hear that the work of each subcommittees were all underway. The next agenda item was a review of the 50K SDP operational funds for 2021. Diana Mavanduse, an agency member from Dixon Hall, walked the group through each of the allocated budget. They were SDP Administrator Coordinator in the amount of $18,715, the Barrier Reduction Funds in the amount of $9,500, the Capacity Building Workshops in the amount of $7,500, the SDP Youth Committee funds in the amount of $5,500, and finally the Resident Engagement Funds in the amount of $7,500. The last part of the meeting was spent on continuing the discussion from the previous January 27th meeting, exploring the purpose of the SDP Planning Committee.
And we go with Daiem for a report on the SDP Community Working Group holds its first orientation session of the year.
On January 27, 2022, the Community Building Working Group held its first orientation session for new members wishing to find out more about the SDP and the activities of the Community Building Working Group. The Regent Park Social Development Plan, also known as the SDP, is a community-wide initiative aimed at fostering unity and togetherness among all the different residents and a group in the community. The Community Building Working Group is one of these four areas of priorities of the SDP. Each priority area is represented by a committee. The SDP committees are safety, communications, employment, and economic development and community building. During the community building orientation session, facilitated by resident member Walid Kogali and agency member Joel Klassen, attendees were introduced to the members and various stakeholder groups that make up the committee. Residents were also informed about the Regent Park redevelopment and the various initiatives and activities of the group. For anyone wishing to see if the community building orientation session is publicly available for viewing on the Regent Park TV. Community Building Working Group meets every second Tuesday over Zoom. To know more about the Community Building Working Group or attend future meetings, contact sdp.cwbg@gmail.com.
Korbin Milo has a report on CEO Mercedes Watson to be leaving Dixon Hall.
CEO Mercedes Watson to be leaving Dixon Hall. In an email sent out on January 13, 2022, Carmen Clayton, a director with the Office of the CEO at Dixon Hall, announced that CEO Mercedes Watson will be leaving Dixon Hall to take on a post with the Ontario government. In her email, Carmen states that during her time with Dixon Hall, Mercedes oversaw 73% growth in the agency, the completion of the Bill Graham Youth Center, a new partnership with McMaster Institute for Research on Aging, MIRA, renewed dedication to the Regent Park and Downtown East network tables, the beginning of the revitalization of rooming houses in Cabbagetown, and the plans to redesign and reestablish the original and ailing 1929 Dixon Hall site at 58 Sumac Street as a community hub for clients and the agency's work in Downtown East. Adonis Huggins, a former chair of the ED Directors Network, which Mercedes was part of, had this to say: "I'm sorry to hear that the Regent Park community and Dixon Hall will be losing Mercedes Watson. Mercedes was a strong advocate and an effective voice on the ED Directors Network. Her leadership will truly be missed." According to Carmen Clayton, transition plans are underway and a replacement will be named in the weeks ahead with the professional assistance of a trusted recruitment partner. Mercedes Watson, the Regent Park community wishes you well in your new government position.
Police response to ongoing Canadian convoy protest question, criticized. Indigenous and environmental activists are closely watching how officers treat convoy protesters blocking the roads in Ottawa and the border crossing in Alberta, saying there is a double standard in police enforcement depending on what the demonstration is about. On Tuesday evening, the Ottawa Police Service announced that 2 arrests have been made, one on January 29th for mischief and one on January 30th for carrying a weapon to a public meeting. On January 29th, a man caused mischief to property. He was not arrested at the time in order to avoid a larger confrontation, says a statement from police. There are 13 criminal investigations underway. There have been 8 reports to a hotline launched to respond to hate-motivated instances, 3 of which are under investigation. In Ottawa, crowds have thinned, but some members of the so-called Freedom Convoy remain. What was originally described as a demonstration against vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers has caused days-long disruptions in the nation's capital. The presence of far-right extremist groups, display of swastikas, comparisons of COVID-19 measures to the Holocaust, desecration of monuments, and racist impersonations of Indigenous ceremony have drawn widespread condemnation. Mi'kmaq lawyer, professor, and activist Pam Palmater says blockades by Indigenous groups that have been deemed illegal, like the Alberta convoy protests, have typically faced harsher, swifter enforcement. There is a marked difference. It's literally night and day, she said. She stresses that those drawing attention to the contrast are not encouraging a violent crackdown on the convoys. However, she says the protests in Ottawa represent more of a public safety threat than those of blockades set up in BC by Indigenous and environmental activists. You've got this scenario where there's actual criminality, there's no organization, it's terribly unsafe. Nurses and paramedics aren't safe. Shelter residents aren't safe. Local residents aren't safe, Palmater says. What this has shown is their failure to act. Their statement saying, we don't want to investigate, we don't want to even write tickets or tow trucks. It shows that mob rules. Angry white mobs can and will and have taken over cities. And the police are saying that there's nothing they can do. That's a huge concern for us as Canadians. Ontario reports over 1,000 deaths from COVID-19 in January. Ontario has reported the deaths of more than 1,000 people due to COVID-19 during the first month of 2022, a grim figure the province's top doctor largely attributes to the more virulent strain, the Delta virus. The province has logged persistently high numbers of fatalities each day in January, despite the dominant Omicron variant of the virus typically causing milder illness and all but replacing the more severe Delta variant almost 8 weeks ago, while circulating among a well-vaccinated population. Essentially, 100% of outbreaks in the community are Omicron right now. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Kieran Moore said, but roughly 10% of hospital admissions are still relevant to Delta. About 57% of the people who died were aged 80 or older, and another 35% were people between the ages of 60 and 79.
Canada welcomes 250 Afghan refugees, including 170 human rights defenders. Canada has welcomed the first cohort of refugees from Afghanistan under a special program for human rights defenders, as promised by the federal government to help thousands of Afghan women leaders, human rights activists, LGBTQ individuals, and journalists flee to Canada. Immigration Minister Shan Fraser announced the arrival of 250 Afghan refugees. It is a privilege to welcome this cohort of Afghan refugees who face persecution as a result of their work to protect the human rights of others. Fraser said in a statement, "I am grateful for their work to document and prevent human rights abuses and proud that they now call our country home." According to the Government of Canada, many of those arriving have worked for decades documenting human rights abuses in Afghanistan. They also intend to continue their work in Canada with the assistance of Canadian and international non-governmental organizations. Ottawa says about 6,750 Afghan nationals have been resettled in Canada since the Taliban took over. They include Afghans who assisted the Canadian military during its mission in Afghanistan. Fraser suggested that it could take up to 2 years for the government to meet its promise of bringing in 40,000 Afghans.
February is Black History Month. February has been recognized as Black History Month in Canada since 1996. Member of Parliament Jean Augustine introduced a motion in the House of Commons on December 14, 1995. The motion aimed to have recognized, quote, the diversity of the Black community in Canada and its importance in the history of this country, and recognize February as Black History Month, end of quote. The House of Commons adopted the motion unanimously, and it went into effect on February 1st, 1996, when Black History Month was officially recognized throughout Canada. Dr. Jean Augustine was the first African-Canadian woman elected as a Canadian Member of Parliament in 1993. Since 1996, the Government of Canada's annual Black History Month campaign encourages all Canadians to learn more about the history of African Canadians. As quiet as it is kept, There has been a documented African presence in Canada since at least 1604. The first person of African heritage known to have come to what is now Canada arrived over 400 years ago. In 1604, African explorer and linguist Matthew da Costa arrived with the French explorers Pierre de Gouin de Mons and Samuel de Champlain. Da Costa, a multilingual interpreter who reportedly spoke Dutch, English, French, and Portuguese, provided an invaluable service as interpreter with the Mi'kmaq people and the Europeans. African Canadians have lived in this country, enslaved and free, before it was Canada, even before it was British North America. African Canadians have contributed to the building of Canada in every area. Unfortunately, the history is not taught in schools. Carter Godwin Woodson, the father of Negro History Week, Black History Month, African Heritage Month, African History Month, African Liberation Month, said, "Those who have no record of what their forebears have accomplished lose the inspiration which comes from the teaching of biography and history."
And now we go with Jabin Haque with events and jobs in Regent Park.
Thanks. Now for events coming in Regent Park. The Center for Learning and Development, with support by the city and the Community Crisis Response Program, is hosting an online mental health and wellness workshop on February 16 from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Discussions will include how to support ourselves, our community, friends and family after traumas like community violence and the COVID-19 pandemic. For more information or to register, please contact Shazab at shazab.ohio@tccld.org or visit the Eventbrite page to get your mental health and wellness workshop tickets. Link in description. The Regent Park Community Health Center is still running COVID vaccination and testing clinics at 40 Oak Street, servicing the community of Regent Park and anyone living in M postal code. People with no immigration status are welcome at the clinic, as well as people with no fixed address or no identification. But if you do have an OHIP card or other identification, please bring it with you, as it will help with the registration process. Focus Media Arts Center, the media organization behind RPTV, would like to invite you to join us on Thursday, February 10th for the I Heart Neighborhood virtual charity auction. This collaborative event includes 5 charitable organizations who are coming together for the 3rd year in a row to raise much needed funds to support important programs and services that positively impact people's lives by providing opportunities to underserved communities. In addition to Focus Media Arts, the charities are TNG, Jesse's, Business in the Streets, and Urban Arts. Collectively, these agencies serve an estimated 70,000 Torontonians each year. Focus Media Arts Center has been active in Regent Park since 1990 and is dedicated to professionally training, mentorships, and participatory media practices that empower communities to tell their own stories. You can participate and support this fundraiser event in a few ways. First off, you can sponsor the event by donating funds or an auction item to Focus Media Arts Center or any one of the other partnering organizations you wish to donate to. Your donation helps support important community programming. You can also participate in the live and silent auction part of fundraiser, which will be held on February 10th and will feature a wide array of items and services from jewelry, entertainment, electronics, art, fashion, travel, and more for you to bid on. Lastly, you can support our fundraising endeavor by sharing this event far and wide with your friends, family, and networks. We are still looking for your sponsors and gifts-in-kind donations for both our live and silent auctions, and every bid helps. For the upcoming phases 4 and 5 of Regent Park redevelopment process, Tridal and TCH are holding an online community meeting. Join this meeting on Wednesday, February 16th from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. and learn more about the proposed plan to be submitted to the city in a few months. Share your input and ask Tridal and TCH any questions you may have. The meeting discussion may be geared towards more affordable housing, high-quality homes, open space, and more community spaces and amenities, including a library. Come, get informed, and help shape the future of Regent Park. For more additional language translations, contact Talk Regent Park at torontohousing.ca 48 hours in advance to request said translation on Zoom. Find more information about phases 4 and 5 of revitalization at www.rp4and5.ca, as well as meeting details, or see how to join the meeting in the description. Tish Benzagi, founder of Born Resilient Youth Services and child and youth worker, will be facilitating the event Every Day in Black History on Thursday, February 17th, via Zoom from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Topics of discussion for this free event will include an overview of racism and privilege in Canadian culture, the impact of trauma on the Black community, and ways to move forward and foster holistic healing. For more information, email sharia@tccld.org or register for the event on Eventbrite, link in description. Now for employment training and opportunities. The Toronto Community Housing Corporation, TCHC, is looking for tenant director with experience in community development, corporate governance, business management, finance, or with knowledge of the field of social housing to join the TCHC board. Must be a TCHC tenant to apply. Applications close on Tuesday, February 15, 2022. You will find the application online at toronto.ca/TCHC tenant or request an application by email by calling 416-397-7570. The Regent Park Film Festival is looking for someone to fill the position of executive director, who will be responsible for leading the festival into the 20th anniversary. The Regent Park Film Festival is the longest-running free film festival and the only community film festival in Canada's largest and oldest public housing neighborhood. This is a full-time, one-year contract with the opportunity to grow into permanent full-time with a salary of $70,000, with health insurance and working from the Daniels Spectrum Building. Anticipated start date is April 11, 2022. Applicants that are currently or former Regent Park residents, people who identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, as well as LGBTQ2S+ women. People with disability or an intersection of these identities will be given priority. Application deadline is February 18th at 11:59 p.m. To read more about the position, responsibilities, and application process, please visit rpff.ca/jobs/.
And that's all for today's show. My name is Murphy Brown, and my co-hosts are Fred Alvarado,
Daiem Mohammad, Korbin Milo, and Jabin Haque.
We also would like to thank our team of researchers that contributed to this week's show. And from our studios at Focus Media Arts Center, thanks for watching and see you next week.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And when you do subscribe, hit the little notification bell so you never miss out on any of our content. If you'd also like more, you can find us on our other social media platforms. And if you want even more, you can look at our website.
Thank you.